The galaxy was old. It had been mapped, studied, and claimed by empires that rose and fell like waves on an endless ocean. The Concord of 7 stars believed they knew every secret the universe held. They had cataloged 1,000,000,000,000 suns. They had recorded the languages of 900 species. Their library stretched across entire moons, filled with the knowledge of 12,000 years. They were wrong about everything that mattered. Commander Valeth stood on the bridge of the survey vessel Pale Observer and stared at her display screen. The readings made no sense. She was a Sonari, tall and thin with silver skin that changed color with her emotions. Right now, her skin had turned a pale blue, the color of confusion. "Run the scan again," she ordered. Her crew obeyed. The results came back the same. They were at the galaxy's edge, in a region of space that every map called dead. Old stars burned here, red and dying. Frozen rocks floated in the darkness between them. No one came to the rim. There was nothing here worth finding, but the Pale Observer had found something. "Commander," said her sensor officer, a small creature covered in brown fur. "The signal is artificial. It repeats every 47 seconds. Someone built the thing that is sending it." Veleth's skin shifted to deep purple. "Fear. That is impossible. We have surveyed this region before. There is no civilization here. The readings do not lie, Commander." She made her decision. The Concord had given her ship one purpose: to explore and report. She would explore. The Pale Observer moved deeper into the rim. As it traveled, the crew noticed something strange. The space around them seemed different. Their instruments detected particles that should not exist. Dark matter hung in thick clouds, arranged in patterns that seemed almost designed. It took them 3 days to understand. Someone had built a wall around this region of space. A wall made of dark matter. A wall meant to hide what was inside. When they passed through the wall, Commander Valeth saw something that would change the galaxy forever. Stars. Dozens of them. Bright and young and surrounded by planets that glowed with the lights of cities. Ships moved between worlds in organized patterns. Stations hung in orbit around gas giants. It was a civilization. A living, breathing civilization that had existed at the edge of everything without anyone knowing. How is this possible? Valeth whispered. The answer came in the form of a transmission. A voice spoke in a language her ship's computers had never heard. But her translation systems were good, and within minutes she understood. "Unknown vessel, you have entered the territory of the United Earth Federation. Please identify yourself and state your intentions. We mean you no harm." United Earth Federation. The species called themselves humans. Commander Valeth opened a channel. "This is Commander Valeth of the Sonari Dominion, representing the Concord of 7 stars. We come in peace. We did not know anyone lived here." There was a pause. Then the voice returned, and Valeth could swear she heard amusement in it. "We know." That was rather the point. Over the next several weeks, the Pale Observer remained in human space. Commander Valeth met with human leaders. She studied their history. She observed their cities and their ships and their way of life. Her reports to the Concord were detailed but dismissive. The humans were soft creatures. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no poison. They lived short lives, rarely more than 100 years. Their technology was functional but unremarkable. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only a few centuries ago. By Concord standards, they were infants. They pose no threat, Valeth wrote. They are a minor species that somehow survived in isolation. I recommend standard integration protocols. They may prove useful as trading partners or laborers. The High Council of the Concord received her report and discussed it for exactly 1 hour. The decision was unanimous. They would send a delegation to Earth. they would offer the humans membership in the galactic community. It was a gift, really. The humans should be grateful. What the council did not discuss was the dark matter wall. No one asked who had built it. No one wondered why a barrier had been constructed around human space. These questions seemed unimportant. If they had asked, they might have searched their oldest archives. They might have found records from 100,000 years ago, written by a species so ancient that even the Concord called them the architects. The architects had mapped the galaxy long before anyone else. They had found the humans too, and they had been afraid, but the council did not ask. They saw only what they expected to see, a small species on the edge of nowhere, waiting to be brought into the light of civilization. They could not imagine that the humans had been watching them too. They could not imagine that every scan the Pale Observer made was recorded by human sensors. They could not imagine that even now, in deep bunkers on a dozen hidden worlds, human strategists were studying Concord technology and finding weaknesses. The Concord had spent 12,000 years building the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. They had conquered challenges that would have destroyed lesser species. They had created peace among 7 founding races and brought hundreds more under their protection. They believed they were the masters of all. They surveyed Dot on a small blue planet at the galaxy's edge. A species that had spent its entire existence fighting itself looked up at the stars and made a quiet decision. They would smile. They would cooperate. They would learn everything the Concord had to teach. And then, when the time was right, they would show the galaxy what humanity was really capable of. Commander Valith returned home to awards and praise. She had discovered a new species. It was a fine addition to her career. She never knew that her discovery had started a clock. Somewhere in the darkness of space, that clock was ticking. And when it reached 0, the heavens themselves would burn. But that was still years away. For now, the humans smiled and welcomed their visitors and asked polite questions about life among the stars. The galaxy looked at humanity and saw nothing to fear. The galaxy was very, very wrong. The delegation arrived on Earth with great ceremony. Their ships were beautiful, covered in gold and silver patterns that caught the light of the human sun. Ambassador Kethril led the group. He was an old Velanti, a species known for wisdom and diplomacy. His body was covered in green scales, and his eyes were large and kind. He expected to find savages. Instead, he found cities of glass and steel. He found art and music and laughter. He found a species that welcomed him with open arms and endless questions. "Tell us about the Concord," the humans asked. "How does your government work? How many species are members? What are your laws?" Kethril was happy to explain. The Concord was a union of 7 great species. Hundreds of lesser species served under their protection. There was peace. There was trade. There was order. And what about war? A human diplomat asked. She was a small woman named Sarah Okonkwo. Her smile was warm, but her eyes were sharp. "Does the Concord have enemies?" Kethril hesitated. "There are challenges. The hegemony of endless night is our oldest enemy. They are cruel. They take what they want. Every century, they emerge from their territory, and we must push them back." "How do you push them back?" "We pay a price. Some worlds are sacrificed. Some species suffer. It is terrible, but it is necessary. The hegemony is too strong to destroy. We can only contain them." Sarah Okonkwo nodded slowly. "That must be very hard for you." "It is the way of things," Kethril said. "But let us speak of happier matters. The Concord offers humanity membership. You will have access to our trade routes. You will have our protection. In return, you will share your territory and your technology with us." The humans agreed to everything. They signed treaties. They opened their borders. They were perfect partners. Kethrol sent glowing reports back to the High Council. "The humans are wonderful," he wrote. "They are curious and eager. They learn quickly. They will make excellent members of the galactic community." What Kethrol did not notice was how the humans learned. A Watcher-class II traveled with the delegation. It was an ancient machine, built to observe and analyze. Unlike the organic members of the delegation, the Watcher did not sleep. It did not get distracted by parties or cultural exchanges. It simply watched, and what it saw troubled it deeply. The humans asked thousands of questions. That was normal for a new species. But the pattern of their questions was not normal. They never asked the same thing twice. Every question built on the answers to previous questions. Every gap in their knowledge, once filled, was marked complete. They were not learning like students. They were learning like soldiers preparing for battle. The Watcher reported its concerns. "The humans are mapping our entire civilization," it warned. "They are studying our military structure. They are analyzing our weaknesses." The High Council dismissed the report. "They are a curious species. It is natural that they want to understand us. There is nothing sinister in asking questions." 3 years passed. Humans spread across 17 Concord worlds. They took jobs as traders, engineers, and scientists. They were helpful and friendly. They made themselves useful. They also built things. Sonari intelligence services intercepted strange communications. Ships were being constructed in the empty spaces between stars. Massive shipyards floated in the void, hidden from normal sensors. The humans were building a fleet. When the intelligence chief brought this information to the High Council, he was told to be quiet. "The humans are a rim species," the council said. "They have no resources. They have no advanced technology. What could they possibly build that threatens the Concord?" The intelligence chief tried to argue. He showed them data. He showed them projections. He showed them evidence that the humans were studying hegemony tactics as well as Concord defenses. The council did not listen. They saw what they wanted to see. Meanwhile, Sarah Okonkwo continued her work. She had risen to become humanity's chief ambassador to the Concord. She attended every council meeting. She smiled at every diplomatic function. She learned the name of every important official in the galactic government. One night, she met with her own advisors in a secure room on Earth. The walls were thick. The room was shielded from every form of surveillance the Concord possessed. "Report," she said. A military officer stepped forward. "The fleet is ahead of schedule. We have 300 capital ships ready. Another 500 will be complete within 2 years. A scientist spoke next. "We have reverse-engineered their gravity manipulation technology. Our version is more efficient. We have also developed new weapons based on their shield frequencies." An intelligence officer finished the briefing. "We have identified every major Concord military installation. We know their patrol routes. We know their response times. We know everything." Sarah nodded. "And the hegemony?" "Studied in detail. They are monsters. They have destroyed hundreds of civilizations. They harvest sentient beings for entertainment. The Concord has been paying tribute to them for 6,000 years. The officer's voice hardened. "They accept this. They call it peace." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was cold. "The Concord found us and offered us membership in a galaxy that has made peace with evil. They smile while billions suffer. They calculate acceptable losses like they are counting inventory. They think we are children who should be grateful for their protection." She stood up and looked at her advisors. "We are not children. We spent our entire history fighting each other. We invented every form of war. We perfected every method of destruction. And now we have learned that the galaxy is run by cowards who feed their own people to monsters. Her hands pressed flat against the table. The Concord thinks they are the masters of this galaxy. The hegemony thinks they are the predators at the top of the food chain. They are both wrong. She looked up at the stars visible through the window. When we are ready, we will show them what humanity does to those who prey on the weak. We will show them what happens when you give us a reason to be angry. Across the galaxy, the Concord slept peacefully. They had no idea that judgment was coming. And in the darkness of space, the human fleet grew larger every day. The hegemony of endless night came without warning. They always did. Their ships were black as the void itself. Thousands of vessels poured out of dark space, their hulls decorated with the bones of conquered species. For 6,000 years, they had terrorized the galaxy. They took what they wanted. They killed who they pleased. And every century, they emerged to remind the Concord who the true masters were. The High Council activated their emergency protocols. Fleets were mobilized. Defense lines were established. And in secret meetings, they calculated the tribute. How many worlds will we sacrifice this time? Asked a council member. 3, perhaps 4, replied the military commander. We will evacuate who we can. The rest will be left for the hegemony. This was how it had always been. The Concord could not defeat the hegemony. They could only pay the price and survive that no one asked humanity for help. The Rim species was too young, too weak, too unimportant. What could they possibly offer against the greatest terror the galaxy had ever known? The answer came 3 days later. The hegemony's scouting fleet of 50 ships entered a system at the galaxy's edge. It was marked as uninhabited on their maps. They expected to find empty planets ripe for conquest. They found something else. The human fleet was waiting. Admiral Chunwei commanded the first strike group from the bridge of the carrier. Unity. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and steady hands. She had trained her entire life for this moment. All ships, weapons free, she ordered. The battle lasted 6 minutes. The hegemony had never faced weapons like these. Gravity lances crushed their ships like toys, crumpling metal into balls of twisted wreckage. Swarm drones poured through holes in their armor, eating through systems and crew alike. Missiles that moved faster than their sensors could track slammed into their engines. When it was over, not a single hegemony ship remained. Admiral Chun opened a channel to the Concord. This is Admiral Chunwei of the United Earth Navy. You should know that 50 hegemony vessels have been destroyed at the following coordinates. We recommend you update your maps. The High Council received this message in stunned silence. That is impossible, said one member. The humans have no fleet capable of such destruction. Then what destroyed those ships? Another asked. Before anyone could answer, more reports came in. Hegemony forces were being attacked across multiple systems. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck with impossible precision, and vanished back into the void. In a single week, the hegemony lost 200 vessels. The hegemony commander, a creature known as the Dread Lord Vexwrath, was not pleased. He redirected his main fleet toward human space. 300 of his most powerful warships. Enough force to break any species in the galaxy. They entered a system that human intelligence had prepared for this exact moment. The Battle of Crimson Point would be remembered for centuries. The hegemony fleet arrived expecting easy prey. They found a human fleet half their size waiting in perfect formation. Admiral Chen Wei stood on her bridge, calm and focused. They outnumber us, her second-in-command said. Numbers are not everything, Chun replied. Begin the operation. What followed was a masterpiece of military strategy. The humans had studied hegemony tactics for years. They knew how the enemy thought. They knew what the enemy expected. And they used that knowledge to destroy them. The first wave of human missiles drew the hegemony into a formation that exposed their flanks. The second wave of gravity lances tore through their lead ships, creating confusion. Then came the third wave, something the galaxy had never seen before. Boarding parties. Humans in powered armor launched themselves across the void. They landed on hegemony ships and cut their way inside. They fought through corridors filled with monsters 3 times their size. They did not stop. They did not retreat. They killed everything in their path. The hegemony had conquered hundreds of species. They had never encountered anything like this. These small, soft creatures were not afraid. They did not flee. They fought with a fury that made no logical sense. When the last hegemony ship fell silent, Admiral Chun surveyed the wreckage. Her fleet had taken losses. Good soldiers had died. But they had won. She opened a channel to the Concord High Council. Her face appeared on screens across the galaxy. This is Admiral Chun Wei. The hegemony will not be collecting tribute this century. We have sent them home. What remains of them? The council demanded an explanation. They demanded to know where humanity had found such weapons. They demanded to know how a rim species had defeated the greatest enemy the galaxy had ever known. We built these weapons ourselves, Admiral Chun said. We have been building them since you found us. But why? Asked Ambassador Kethril, his scales pale with shock. Why would you prepare for war? We offered you peace. We offered you protection. Admiral Chun's expression did not change. You offered us a place in a galaxy that feeds its children to monsters. You offered us protection from a threat you pay tribute to. You showed us a universe that has accepted evil as normal. She leaned forward slightly. Did you think we would accept that? Did you think we would wait quietly until it was our turn to be sacrificed? You do not know humanity, Ambassador. We do not wait. We do not accept. We prepare. The channel closed. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched replays of the battle. They saw hegemony ships burning. They saw human soldiers fighting in the void. They saw something they had never imagined possible. The hegemony could be defeated. For 6,000 years, the galaxy had lived in fear. Now, that fear had a new target. On Earth, Sarah Concord watched the reports with satisfaction. This was only the beginning. The hegemony was wounded, not destroyed. They would regroup. They would seek revenge, and humanity would be waiting. The clock that had started when the pale observer found humanity was still ticking. But now, everyone could hear it. And they were beginning to understand what it meant. The heavens were about to change forever. The High Council met in emergency session. For the first time in 3,000 years, all 7 founding species were present in the same room. Fear hung in the air like a poisonous fog. What are they? Demanded the Cenari representative. What have we brought into our galaxy? They were already in our galaxy, corrected the Volanthi elder. We simply did not know they were there. The debate raged for hours. Some wanted to attack humanity before they grew stronger. Others argued for alliance. Still others suggested retreating to the core worlds and letting the rim burn. None of them understood what they were truly dealing with. The answer came from the oldest archive in Concord space. A young researcher named Tevril had been searching through records that had not been opened in 100,000 years. What he found made his blood run cold. He rushed to the council chamber and demanded to be heard. The dark matter wall around human space, he said, his voice shaking. We assumed it was their creation. It was not. It was built by the architects. Silence fell. The architects were legends. They had mapped the galaxy before any current species existed. Their technology was beyond understanding. Their motives were unknown. They had vanished millions of years ago, leaving only scattered ruins behind. Why would the architects build a wall around humans? asked a council member. Tevril placed a data crystal on the table. A holographic message appeared, ancient symbols that the translation system struggled to decode. But slowly, the words became clear. We have found a species on the third planet of a yellow star at the galaxy's edge. They call themselves humans. We have studied them for 1,000 years. We have reached our conclusion. The message paused. The council leaned forward. They are not like the others. Where other species seek balance, they seek victory. Where other species accept limits, they break through them. They do not bend when pressure is applied. They do not stop when logic demands surrender. What you would call cruelty, they call Tuesday. What you would call endurance, they call breakfast. Another pause. They fight each other constantly. They invent new ways to kill with terrifying creativity. And yet they also create beauty. They write poetry about love while building weapons of mass destruction. They are chaos shaped into flesh. The final words burn themselves into every mind present. We have decided to contain them. The wall will hide them from the galaxy. Perhaps in time, they will destroy themselves. If not, we leave this warning to whatever species finds them. Do not free them. Do not teach them where the stars lead. Do not give them reason to remember that they are angry. If you ignore this warning, whatever happens next will be your fault. The message ended. The council sat in stunned silence. The architects, the most advanced species ever known, had been afraid of humans. They had built a prison around an entire region of space just to keep them contained. And the Concorde had opened the door. Before anyone could speak, the chamber doors opened. Sarah Okonkwo walked in, uninvited and unannounced. Guards moved to stop her, but something in her eyes made them hesitate. "I see you found the warning," she said. Her voice was calm, almost friendly. "We found it too, about 10 years ago. Buried in one of the architect ruins near our space." "You knew?" Ambassador Cathrol whispered. "You knew what you were?" "We knew what the architects thought we were. They were not entirely wrong." Sarah took a seat at the council table as if she belonged there. "We are everything they described. We are violent. We are stubborn. We are very, very good at destruction." She looked around the room at the frightened faces of the galaxy's leaders. But the architects missed something important. They saw our capacity for war. They did not see our capacity for love, for justice, for protection. We fight each other, yes, but we also die for each other. We build weapons that can destroy worlds, and then we build hospitals to save lives. We are not simple creatures. What do you want? Asked the Sonari representative. If you could defeat the hegemony, you could defeat us. Are you going to conquer the galaxy? Sarah laughed. It was not a cruel sound, but it was not entirely warm either. Conquer you? No, we do not want your worlds. We do not want your technology. We do not want to rule over species that have spent millennia making peace with evil. A voice hardened. We want the hegemony. What do you mean? I mean, we are going to destroy them, not defeat them, not push them back, not negotiate a treaty. We are going to find every hegemony world, every hegemony ship, every hegemony soldier, and we are going to end them, completely, forever. The council stared at her in horror. That is genocide, someone whispered. Sarah stood up slowly. The hegemony has spent 6,000 years consuming other species for sport. They have tortured billions. They have harvested sentient beings like crops. And all of you have watched. You have paid tribute. You have calculated acceptable losses. You have called this peace. Her eyes swept across the room. We do not call this peace. We call this cowardice. You had the power to fight. You chose to sacrifice the weak instead. So no, we will not apologize for what we are about to do. When we are finished, you will look up at the sky and see the ashes of a civilization that thought it was untouchable. And you will ask yourselves a question. She walked toward the door. Were we the monsters? Or did we simply do what you were too afraid to do? She paused at the threshold. The architects tried to lock us away because they feared what we might become. You set us free because you thought we were harmless. You were both wrong. We are not monsters. We are not saviors. We are human. And the hegemony is about to learn what that means. She left. The council sat in silence. The war was coming, and they could do nothing but watch. The war lasted 7 years. History would remember it as the harrowing. It was not a war like the galaxy had ever seen. There were no negotiations. There were no pauses. There was no mercy. Humanity attacked with a fury that shocked every species watching. Their fleets moved through hegemony space like fire through dry grass. World after world fell. Fleet after fleet burned. The hegemony tried to fight back. They gathered their greatest armies. They called upon every weapon in their arsenal. They had conquered hundreds of civilizations. They had crushed every enemy they ever faced. None of that mattered. Admiral Chen Wei led the first campaign. She took 40 systems in 3 months. Her ships moved through hegemony defenses like ghosts, appearing where they were least expected, striking with impossible precision. How do they know where we are? The hegemony commanders screamed. How do they know our weaknesses? The answer was simple. Humanity had been studying them for years. Every battle report, every tactical manual, every piece of intelligence the Concord had ever gathered. The humans had read it all. They knew the hegemony better than the hegemony knew themselves. When Chen Wei captured her first hegemony world, she found something in the capital city. Massive structures filled with cages. Inside the cages were members of a dozen different species prisoners being kept for entertainment, for food, for sport. The admiral stood in front of those cages for a long time. Then she gave an order that would define the entire war. Take no prisoners. Across the galaxy, the Concord watched in horror and fascination. They had lived in fear of the hegemony for 6,000 years. Now they watched that same hegemony dying. Human soldiers fought in conditions that would have killed any other species. They advanced through poison atmospheres. They battled in frozen wastelands. They climbed over the bodies of their fallen comrades and kept going. When their weapons ran empty, they used knives. When their knives broke, they used their hands. The hegemony did not understand. These soft, short-lived creatures should have broken. They should have begged for peace. They should have run, but humans did not run. They had a word for what they were doing. They called it total war. It meant fighting until one side no longer existed. Year by year, the hegemony shrank. Their outer territories fell first, then their industrial worlds, then their military strongholds. Finally, only their home systems remained. The final battle took place above the hegemony homeworld. The Dread Lord Vexwrath commanded the last fleet personally. 2,000 ships against humanity's 5,000. It was hopeless, but the hegemony had never surrendered in their entire history. They would not surrender now. Admiral Chen Wei faced Vexwrath across the void of space. She opened the communication channel. You can still end this, she said. Surrender. Accept judgment for your crimes. Some of your people may survive. Vexwrath laughed. It was an ugly sound, filled with hatred. We are the hegemony of endless night. We do not surrender to prey. We will kill as many of you as we can before we fall. And someday, something will destroy you too. Chun nodded slowly. I expected that answer. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the hegemony fleet was ash floating in the void. Human soldiers landed on the homeworld. They fought through cities built from the bones of conquered species. They cleared every building. They found every hiding place. When the sun rose the next morning, the hegemony of endless night no longer existed. Sarah Al-Concour walked through the ruins of the hegemony capital. Smoke rose from collapsed buildings. Silence had replaced the sounds of battle. She was old now, her hair white, her face lined with years of war and worry. Ambassador Kethril walked beside her. He had watched everything. He had seen humanity transform from a rim species to the most terrifying force the galaxy had ever known. Was it worth it? He asked. All this death? All this destruction? Sarah stopped walking. She looked up at the gray sky, still thick with ash. When we studied your history, she said, we learned about the tribute worlds. The planets your Concord sacrificed to keep the hegemony satisfied. We learned names. The Lax Prime, the Singing Moons of Keth, the Garden of Endless Summer. Beautiful worlds. Billions of lives. Fed to monsters because you were too afraid to fight. She turned to face him. We found survivors on some of those worlds. Species the hegemony kept alive for entertainment. Children born in cages who had never seen the sky. Entire generations that knew nothing but suffering. Her voice was steady but heavy. When we freed them, they could not believe it. They thought it was a trick. They had forgotten that rescue was possible. She started walking again. Was it worth it? Ask them. Ask the species who will never again wake up fearing the hegemony. Ask the children who will grow up free. Ask the worlds that will never burn for someone else's peace. Kethril had no response. The galaxy changed after the harrowing. The Concord never recovered its former power. The balance that had existed for 12,000 years was gone. Many species resented humanity. Many more feared them. But something else happened to the predator species that had lurked in dark corners of the galaxy went quiet. The slavers and raiders and conquerors looked at what humanity had done to the hegemony and decided to stay hidden. For the first time in recorded history, the weak could travel the stars without fear. Humanity did not try to rule the galaxy. They withdrew to their own space, expanded their territory slowly, and kept to themselves. But everyone knew they were watching. Everyone knew that somewhere in the stars, the species that had burned the hegemony to ash was waiting to see if anyone else needed to be taught the lesson. Years later, a young researcher discovered a transmission sent during the final battle. It was Admiral Chun Wei's last order before the hegemony homeworld fell. Remember why we fight. Not for conquest. Not for glory. We fight because the galaxy forgot that evil must be destroyed, not tolerated. We fight because someone has to. And we fight because we are human. This is what we do. The galaxy had found humanity at its edge and discovered too late what they truly were. Not monsters. Not saviors, just a species that refused to accept a universe where the weak existed only to suffer. The heavens had burned to ash. And from that ash, something better was growing, one species at a time.